Hey there, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Game Plan. It's week 15, and we're breaking down the DraftKings main slate. We're going to hit all the big questions: which teams are fighting to stay alive, who has a big game, and where are the value plays on the slate. Don't forget to hit subscribe and drop your favorite comment, your favorite DFS plays in the comments. We have a full slate of 13 games this week with no more buys for the rest of the year. It feels a little bit random with 13 games on the slate of who we should be picking. Do you happen to go to look for smaller slates, like a 1 o'clock only or a 4 o'clock only, just so you can narrow this down a little bit?
Honestly, I probably should a little bit more. I really like the smaller slates, and typically, the uglier the slate, the better I perform. Or there definitely is correlation between the 2. I feel like my strengths are definitely looking at those depth pieces and more of the teams that are not the big name teams. So, I might be looking at the 1 o'clock window, especially with the first game we're gonna be talking about, mm, getting
Yeah.
into the Detroit and Rams matchup. It is kind of a defining game on this slate, and a lot of your decisions come down to how do you attack that. So the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. are kind of good alternatives if you're looking to avoid those decisions.
Yeah, so as we're going through these games, we will go through our normal way, which is by their over under line, the highest point total games first. But I've tried to indicate which games are 4 p.m. So you can in your mind go, if you really want to avoid a game, then that's at 4 p.m. or 1 p.m. Then you'll know, and you'll be able to look for those different contest. So let's kick it off with that Detroit game. Detroit is at the Rams. Rams are favored by 5.5. Over unders 55.5, and this is a 4 o'clock game.
Yeah, this one should be fun. I kind of wish it was that prime time game because it feels almost impossible to get away from this matchup for DFS. We know the shootout potential from both the Lions and the Rams, and the Rams DFS formula has been pretty consistent through the years. You need a team that can keep up, you need a dome, and then preferably kind of a bad defense on the other side. The first 2 are checked, and we have a lot of injuries to the Lions secondary. Terry and Arnold on IR, Branch is out, and then Kirby Joseph is also questionable. So I think that third one is in play here too.
It is. There are way just too many storylines in this game, starting with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford swapping teams. They'll never get away from that, I don't think. But they both want to deliver their best for this game, and they're both coming off good performances with completion rates over 70% last week. The Rams just allowed Michael Wilson, though, to go for 40 points with Jacoby Brissett. So I'm looking at the quarterbacks first. The quarterbacks, Jared Goff at 6,100 has to get above 25 points to pay for that 6,100 price tag. He's done that only twice this year. And in those 2 games, one was one was week 2 against Chicago, and the other was week 10 against Washington. In week 2, he brought Amon-Ra St. Brown with him and Jameson Williams too. So the stack of all 3 of them would have done very well, would have paid for itself in DFS. Notice that Jahmyr Gibbs was not on that stack with him in that week too. Week 10, it was Jameson and Gibbs along with Jared Goff. My point is, when he delivers, he does often bring 2 other people, players on that team with him, which not all of the quarterbacks do, but he does. What do you think about Jared Goff and playing him this week?
Yeah, I actually like Jared Goff above Stafford because we talk about those Rams shootout, and typically Stafford's the quarterback that we're getting the discount in. We saw it with like when they played Buffalo in the past and crazy game. But I mean, Stafford was the cost effective option compared to Josh Allen. But here they're both pocket passers. Stafford's price a lot higher. I like going with the cheaper one if this game hits and going with Jared Goff and attacking it that way.
Yeah, I do too. Stafford does cost more, so he needs to be upwards of the 28 to 30 plus points. And he's only done that twice too this season. Those were weeks 4 and 5 when they played Indianapolis and the San Francisco 49ers. In those weeks, in week 4, he took Puka with him for 39 points, but Adams lagged behind at 15. And in week 5, Kyron Williams delivered with him and 32 points. he had 2 of Stafford's touchdown passes that week. Puka then got 24, but it seems like it either is Puka or it's Adams, and it's not both of them going along for the ride with Stafford.
Yeah. And kind of moving on from the quarterbacks and onto those Rams wide receivers, I feel like it's going to be an Adams game. We saw Puka get a couple touchdowns. Touchdowns are not his normal MO. And actually, believe it or not, Adams is a little underperforming his target share, especially in the red zone for the amount of touchdowns that he's projected, especially in the last few weeks. So now that one of their tight ends is on IR, they're kind of moving away from those multiple tight end sets and moving back to those wide receivers. I like Adams here, and then it really just opens up a lot for the Ram side. I think if you want a cheaper side to try to afford this stack, Colby Parkinson at tight end at 3,200 is a really good option too.
Yeah, I have a problem with Devontae Adams. He's not delivered a performance worthy of his $7,200 salary all year. He needs to be above 32 points for that to pay off, and he's only even hit 25 twice this year. He seems to cap out at about 26 points each week. So I kind of like staying away from him, going to Puka. I feel like he's the go-to person in games like this, that they lean on him. But we've seen even at 25 points, Devontae Adams is not a bad play. I
Yeah,
kind of like just going the cheaper options here. What about Jahmyr Gibbs? What do you think about the running game against the Rams?
I love Gibbs because even though the Rams have a really good front, he is basically a wide receiving option for this team as well. You know, right behind Jamison Williams. And actually, I loved his wide receiving prop when Amon-Ra was a little banged up. So if Amon-Ra's still kind of nursing that injury, he has had some time to heal up. But I still think that they're going to get Gibbs involved, especially when they're trying to keep pace with the Rams. I think we'll see a heavy share of just the snaps go to Gibbs rather than getting Montgomery involved. So Gibbs here on this slate, I really like going to. I don't really have any interest in Montgomery. And then I'm also really off of Amon-Ra St. Brown and just preferring to go with the cheaper Jamison Williams here. I like both the wide receiver twos in this matchup.
Yeah, I definitely like Jamison Williams better in this one because of his price. I think this game gets super interesting if either team gets out 14, 17 points. Then we definitely know that's the side you want to be on. So if in your mind that's the game script that you're seeing is that the Rams perhaps have that big lead, then you're all in on Detroit. Or if you think the Detroit Lions are going to get that big lead, then go all in on the Rams, because a lot of this could come in junk time.
Yeah. And kind of speaking to that, of like, what are the other routes this game can go? I think if this game fails, the way this game completely fails is the Lions' banged up O-line just gets outclassed by that talented Rams front. And the Rams kind of control the time of possessions. They're able to run the ball with both Corum and Kyron Williams splitting the work. I think that would kind of set up well for either Kyron or Corum to pay off their price, but probably not both. And maybe even not any other pieces in this game coming along with.
Yeah, I can see that. I think we saw that happen to Detroit a few weeks ago. I believe they were playing Green Bay, and they just got totally shut down. And that would
Yeah.
be how this game completely fails for DFS purposes. All right, let's move on to another game. We've got too many to cover here. We've got the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Baltimore is favored by 2.5. Over/under is 52.5. This is a 1 o'clock game.
Didn't we just do this matchup?
We did. We've got a lot of these matchups where divisional games too, where the teams are playing, almost not back to back weeks, but they take a week break playing somebody else and then they go right back to playing each other. There are a ton of them on the slate this year. It's kind of crazy. So both of these defenses are playing much better than they started the year. Baltimore and Cincinnati just look like dumpster fires, and you could score at will against them. And in recent weeks, that hasn't been the case. Is this a classic divisional game? I also want to point out, yeah, they played not last week, but the week before. I guess that was week 12. And 24 of those points were scored by kicks. They were field goals. In a world where every coach is going for it on fourth down, the Bengals decided just to keep kicking the field goal, taking the field goal and getting their 3 points, and that's why that game looked a little bit more lopsided than it was.
Yeah.
This one should go a little bit different. I mean, it's not every game you're gonna kick 8 field goals.
Also, a couple weird things happened in that matchup too. Henry looked pretty good early on. We also had that big play from Isaiah Likely that ended up being a fumble into the back of the end zone rather than a touchdown. So it looked much more competitive, and I think we had a lot more offense than that score indicate from a couple weeks ago. Also, Cincinnati's defense, they still have very clear weaknesses. You know, they kind of get dominated on the ground, and those linebackers are just terrible in coverage. So it really opens up those tight ends in the intermediate routes.
Yeah, well, if they watched the Bengals and play the Bills last week, then Lamar Jackson should know what he needs to do. He should have taken a few notes from Josh Allen, and you can run against the Bengals, so he's going to have to do it. That's the big question. Do we get Lamar Jackson running this week? He ran 7 times last week. He's getting more comfortable running, but do you trust him to play him in DFS? And he's a little pricey.
I think I like him as a tournament play because how often, if this was Lamar Jackson from last year, past couple years, and you saw a 6,400 price tag against the Bengals defense, it'd be a no-brainer. He'd be the number one quarterback by far on that slate. And he did look a lot healthier last week. So I think if we're starting to see him come into form, this is the matchup to really just go nuclear and have another one of those like week-winning performances, which we know he has the talent to do. It's just the health and that injury getting back from it. So it was really promising to see that 7 for 43 and a touchdown against Steelers. I liked him in tournaments this week.
Yeah, I think he's a fun play. So many people are off of him and have just written him off. He also got Zay Flowers going last week. He finally came through with 8 catches on 11 targets. And they're definitely going to Likely and Mark Andrews more. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm stacking up Jackson, I want to bring one of those tight ends. I'm probably fading Zay Flowers. He's actually the wide receiver 1 against Cincinnati is not a good matchup. And Zay Flowers disappears. He has enough games where he just is at a focal point in the offense. So I'm fading Zay. Even if I'm stacking with Lamar, I'm probably going either Andrews or Likely in that case.
Yeah, well, don't forget the other quarterback. What do you think of Joe Burrow? 6,600, so 200 more. He delivered 4 touchdowns last week and was still only worth 25 points. He's going to need a 5-touchdown game. They pay, I feel like.
That is the exact reason why I will be avoiding him this week. He just, at 6,600, your margin for error is so little, and this Baltimore defense has been tightening up. So I'd rather rooting for Burrow to keep it competitive and really allow Jackson to hit his potential than to go Burrow.
Yeah, I like Lamar a little bit better too, even though Burrow's at home. Yeah. So let's move on to everyone else. T. Higgins. Probably no T. Higgins this week. Is everybody just going to be playing Ja'Marr Chase?
Yeah, it's hard to avoid him. I mean, in spots, the one thing I'll say is that Chase kind of gets his regardless. It hasn't really mattered whether or not T. Higgins has been in the lineup for the seasons they've had together. The real beneficiary when we see Higgins go down is Mike Gesicki, who really is a wide receiver for this team. And he also made great catches in that game against the Bills. So I think Gesicki can repeat. And at 3,300, he might be a really good way to get different. But Chase does afford you that ceiling outcome of going nuclear, against those Ravens. Even the past couple of years, he's had like 200-yard games and multi-touchdown games. So that's just a true ceiling that you can't get from many other wide receivers on the slate.
Yeah, I like Mike Gesicki. Like you said, 3,300. He needs 12 points. If he gets 1 catch in the end zone, he's probably going to get enough to pay for him and make it here for you. There are a lot of tight ends on the slate, though, that I really like that are being used more in that wide receiver role. So you can definitely play 2 tight ends, I feel like, right now in this week, which we don't usually say. It's like, no, you don't want to do that. But there are just so many that are being used so strongly on the slate that it feels like we can use to get a little different and afford those Amon-Ra's or Pukas or Ja'Marr Chases.
It did used to be like a cardinal rule in DFS that you are not supposed to play 2 tight ends, but I think it kind of matches what we're seeing in the actual NFL, which makes me feel a little bit better. We're seeing these multi-tight end packages used more by offenses, and we're kind of dealing with the same thing of just these really good value plays at tight end here this week.
Yeah, I do want to point out Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is also down to 3,900, and we talked a little bit about Isaiah Likely, and I know you love Likely, but they still have Mark Andrews there, and I couldn't even get him on the Week 14 performance chart at first because he had such a bad Week 13. So I've got him like listed here by himself, but he's down to 3,900. He still had 5 targets last week to Isaiah Likely 6, but he only caught one of them. That was the problem, and Likely got the touchdown. I like him just as well in this one. I know he's $600 more, but he definitely could be the tight end. And if you're building lineups, you might want to swap him in on a few instead of Likely if you've got the extra money.
Yeah, I think they're a true toss-up. If I had to predict it, they're going to be one of them going to score a touchdown. That's going to be the one you're happy with, and they're seeing the exact same target share. It's really just flip a coin. If you need the cost savings, Likely is a little cheaper and can maybe just fit in your lineup better. But Andrews is unique where most people will probably go Likely ahead of him, so he's helpful to get different tournaments.
Yeah. How about either running back, Chase Brown or Derrick Henry? Any interest?
I really like Derrick Henry, and that's about it. I don't think Chase Brown's going to have a great day against the Ravens here, but Derrick Henry could be, if this game kind of fails, the way it fails, where we know as soon as it kind of gets into these colder months, that's when Henry really starts heating up. And he is getting the workload. He's had over 20 carries in most of the games here recently. So I
Yeah.
like him as a good spinoff. He also hasn't been scoring touchdowns. So that's typically Henry's MO and what I want to look for here. So I think I like Henry here.
I do like Henry too. 25 carries last week, 94 yards, just didn't get that touchdown. So I think you can go to him when he's getting that much workload. That's kind of the problem with Chase Brown right now. Samaje Perine is eating into those carries for a while. Perine was out, and then Chase Brown was it. He was their back and getting all of the workload. Now, last week, he had 12 carries and Perine had 6. So we're starting to see that share eat into his production, I feel like. All right, let's move on to the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Buffalo is favored by 1. Over under is 49.5, 1 o'clock game. Bills lost to New England in week 5. And now we have the Patriots coming off a bye. They're at home. I don't see how this goes well for the Bills.
Yeah, I think especially here in the snow, I really like the Patriots to kind of show up and really have a good game, especially on the ground. I think right now we're supposed to get some snow in this game, not really any of the winds or any other considerations. It's not even supposed to be that cold, just around like 30 degrees. So those conditions really favor the run and kind of what we saw in Buffalo last week. Buffalo is already 29 EPA per rush. So I think it's just going to be a heavy dose of Ramondre and Henderson. It's just trying to figure out which one this week. And the Pats are much better against the rush.
Yes, they are. On quarterbacks, so we've got Josh Allen and Drake May. The only way this goes well for the Bills is if Josh Allen comes away with 35-point week again, like he did last week. Last week, he took it all on himself. They were behind that game against the Bengals, and he just took it on himself to come back and take control and win that game. I don't think that he can do that against the New England defense. That's a lot different than the Bengals defense.
I completely agree. And I don't
So I
even
don't,
like
yeah.
May on the other side, really, because I think this will be competitive. I think we're going to get a slower game here. And really the only ones I'm looking for are those New England running backs. What about you?
Yeah, the same here. And I really don't want to get into that split with the New England running backs. Maybe I should, but it's just such, a 60-40 share. I believe Travion Henderson is the more talented back, but for some reason they love Ramondre Stevenson, especially when they get down close to the goal line. So I kind of hesitate there. I think I'd rather just go to Henry or somebody I know that's going to get the ball a lot more. How about James Cook? 8,000. I don't think he's worth it this week.
I can't go James Cook for 8,000. He had a great game. He's looked phenomenal, but this just isn't the matchup. I mean, all year, the Patriots have been great at stuffing the rush. I think we'll kind of see that come into play here. I just think there's much better options for a cheaper price than Kitty.
Any interest in Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid?
Sure, New England has had a weakness in the past against tight ends. Yeah, I think it just kind of scares me because you have Knox, Kincaid. You even saw Jackson Haas get in the end zone as well.
Yeah.
So just with the amount of splitting it, this isn't Cincinnati levels bad against tight ends. So there's already a kind of a plethora of tight end options on this slate. So I don't think I'm going Kincaid or Knox this week.
Yeah, I don't think I am either, but it is interesting how yet another team has kind of replaced their wide receivers with all of their tight ends. And it's just too big of a mess for on the New England side for me to guess who's going to be the wide receiver this week or if it's going to be Hunter Henry as well. And Hunter Henry's getting priced up there at 4,400. I think there are other tight end plays on the slate below 4,000 that I'm more willing to play.
He is. And I will say for the rest of the plays, you mentioned you're off of Ramondre or Henderson. I really like Ramondre. We saw him immediately walk in last week or the week before they were on their bye. He was at 58% of the snaps. And I just kind of want the volume against this bad Buffalo team. So I want the player that's on the field more, even though I also agree that I think Henderson's that big play opportunity. So give me Ramondre here. I think he's a fun cost-saving running back to get really different and will probably be low owned.
Yep, fair enough. Let's move on to the Washington Commanders at the New York Giants. Giants are favored by 2, over-under is 47.5. We should be back to Marcus Mariota at quarterback after Jaden Daniels got hurt yet again with that elbow. And given their 3-10 record, they should probably be shutting down Jaden Daniels, I would think.
Yeah, I like both quarterbacks here. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of do too. Quarterbacks that have done well against the Giants have done it on the ground, and Mariota can do that. I'm kind of curious at 5K, but I'm also curious at Jackson Dart at 5,600. He's kind of a little bit more interesting because he's just more dynamic, I think. Where are you?
I like Dart because, like you were mentioning, like the Giants team is very weak against the rush. It's allowing these mobile quarterbacks to rack up those yards, and the Commanders are terrible against the pass, and they're racking it up in the air game. I think it's more likely that Dart can succeed through the air and then also just get enough on the ground because he scrambles so much than it is for Mariota to be a pretty good passer against this Giants team. But I think Mariota will keep the chains moving with his legs to make it a competitive game. So I'm leaning Dart here.
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way. Let's move on to the rest of the team. It's hard to even show performance from the Commanders for last week because they were all just so bad. They were totally shut down by the Vikings. I did not see that coming. Not a total shutdown as it was. Jaden Daniels getting hurt in that game was kind of a disaster for them. And then the injury to Zach Ertz. So now they've lost Zach Ertz, which was kind of their go-to person. Can Ben Sinnott step in?
I liked Sinnott. He was,
Sinnott.
I think he was taken, in the second round last year, and he was a really fun prospect, but he has never been involved in this team with Ertz around. I'm kind of leaning away. I don't think they'll immediately acclimate him, but he'll be a fun story to watch in the next couple weeks to see if he's going to have a life going into next fantasy season. But I don't think I'm going to go here in DFS.
Yeah, fair enough. Wide receivers. Giants wide receivers. Who do you like? I think if you play Mariota, it's kind of, to me, it's standalone. I don't need to play Mariota with any of his wide receivers. I don't need to guess if he's going to favor Terry McLaurin or Deebo Samuel or who it's going to be. I could just play Mariota for his legs.
Yeah. And it'd honestly be kind of nice if we could play Dart and then just Mariota as like a running back, because I think he'll probably be the most successful running back for the Commanders. For stacking partners with Dart, I'm really interested in either Slayton or Theo Johnson. The Commanders have actually been pretty good about taking away the primary options. We saw Justin Jefferson only get 2 catches last week, while McCarthy had a pretty good game. When Bo Nix had over 300 yards, Sutton had 5 catches. When Goff had 303 touchdowns, Allen Ra had 5 catches. So it's all those secondary options that succeed against this matchup. So I really like Slayton and Theo Johnson to come along rather than like a Wan'Dale Robinson, even though Wan'Dale's been pretty good this year.
This game just feels like a letdown, especially after the other games that we've already talked about. And then there are a lot more fun games, in my opinion, coming up on the slate. And this one just hits at 47, but feels like it shouldn't really be there. So I'm kind of just staying away from it.
I got that. I do like the Dart Theo Chris Rodriguez really cheap stack that, and then paying up at other spots here.
Let's move on to Tennessee Titans at the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco's favored by 12.5. Over under is 44.5. Is this a stay away game other than the 49ers defense?
It probably is. I think you could go a 49ers onslaught. I don't want anything to do with the Titans, even though they're showing a little bit more fight in these last couple weeks. I just don't think it'll be a competitive game. Vegas doesn't either. I mean, it's a 12.5 point spread. So I don't think they're going to show the offense they did against Cleveland. And the only way I think you can really play here is Purdy bringing along a couple of the pass catchers like Kittle or Pearsall.
Yeah, but how can you have a stack without Christian McCaffrey?
It's true. I think you're saying Christian McCaffrey basically gets it done through the air. So you're getting the production with Purdy, and then he only has one touchdown. Because at 9K, you really need an amazing performance.
You do, yeah.
By McCaffrey. So if he just has an average one, I think that shows up well for Purdy, but not for McCaffrey.
Yeah, I haven't been playing much from this one. I like Pearsall just because I like his connection with Brock Purdy. So we can go through quarterbacks real quick. Brock Purdy 42 or 6,200 and Cam Ward at 4,600. Obviously, I mean, I guess you could play Cam Ward because he is cheap and he might hit 20 points if they're letting him, but they still only let him throw it 28 times last week against Cleveland.
It's more on the ground.
Yeah, it was Tony Pollard last week. Tony Pollard had a crazy day, racking up 161 yards and 2 touchdowns last week and 31 points. I don't think he's going to do that again against the 49ers defense. I think that changes a little bit here. I don't like any of the Tennessee pieces. It would only be parts from San Francisco. And I like Pearsall at 5,100, mostly because of his price tag. If he catches a touchdown and has 100 yards, then he more than pays for himself at that price. Yeah. Everyone else is a little bit more expensive. And Kittle at 5,400 is a way pricey tight end for this slate.
I agree. I also think Pearsall is probably the biggest benefactor of that bye week, too, because there just hasn't been too many weeks where we've had a healthy Brock Purdy and a healthy Ricky Pearsall. So it's nice to actually have them, and especially with how Purdy throws and just being more of an anticipatory thrower, you really need to have that connection with the wide receiver. So I think Pearsall will be a better option down the stretch here over Jennings.
Yeah, and they're, the 49ers, they are getting healthy. Even Christian McCaffrey, to my surprise, is healthy, but they're sitting in third in their division right now at they're 9-4 and they're third. Whoever wins this division is probably getting the number 1 seed, but right now we've got the Seahawks and the Rams tied for that.
Yeah, and with how competitive it is for even a wild card spot in the NFL or NFC, the 49ers really need this game.
Yeah, they need this game. They'll do what they need to do to win. I'm just not really sure what they have to do to win. And to win and not get anybody hurt, I think Christian McCaffrey will come away with 25 points easy this week. That just doesn't pay for $9,000 is the problem. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 4.5, over-unders 43.5. One of these games in this 40 to 45 point total is going to produce what we're looking for in the fantasy value. Is this one it? We have 2 good teams that I think we maybe overvalue their defense a little bit. Can they show up here?
I think we're going to see a very similar performance to what we just saw in that Monday night game for the Chargers. They got it done basically just through field goals, but Kansas City's defense is the best unit in this game with how banged up the Chargers O-line is. I feel like out of the matchups, especially in this 40-point range, this one feels like it's destined to hit the under, and that's kind of my read on this game.
Okay, so both quarterbacks coming off struggling performances, below 50% completion rate. Herbert was running for his life because he has no offensive line anymore. I am kind of amazed that the Chargers' running game has looked as good as it has without the offensive line. It's like, who's blocking up there? Because they're not doing it when Herbert's going back to pass it. Yeah, if I have to pick one of these quarterbacks, it would probably be Patrick Mahomes at home to bounce back. They obviously need a win here to keep their season even alive a little bit. And they're probably going to need some help too. But so Patrick Mahomes could definitely bounce. But the Chargers have been holding their own as well.
They have. And like you were saying, I mean, combined with Herbert, Vidal, and Hampton, they ran the ball 37 times against the Eagles on Monday.
That is crazy. That's what they're going to try to do. The Chiefs are going to know that. These two teams played in week 1 and they put up some points. Both quarterbacks would need to produce 20 to 28 points. And when they played in week 1, they did that. I feel like their defenses hadn't really caught on to what was going to happen. But if it happens and Mahomes does, if you believe in this game and the Chiefs, you're going to go with Patrick Mahomes. He's going to bounce. He's going to get it done at home and he's going to look good for this game, getting it done. Then who's he bringing along with him? They don't really have a running game in Kansas City. So I feel like it would have to be Rashee Rice. If you're going to stack him, you've got to stack him with Rashee Rice and or Kelsey.
Yeah, I completely agree. I lean towards Rashee Rice. We saw some uncharacteristic drops, but there's no way that Mahomes has a great game and Rice isn't valuable in that setting. So I love pairing them. They're just heavy correlated in their production. You know, when one has a bad game, they both go. So I'm taking Rice anytime I'm getting Mahomes here.
Yeah, I am too. And if this is the game script that you're believing, then I think that's how you enter this game and play this game. I mean, it is in Kansas City, and we do have to give them credit. They do tend to play better at home. I kind of like Rashee Rice. I know they're going to try to get him the ball. And the Chargers, I think after the Chargers handled the Eagles last week, that the Chiefs players are going to be very low owned. So I don't mind playing the stack.
I think it's pretty easy for like Rashee Rice to get over 100, 1 or 2 touchdowns. And immediately would be a great value at 77.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else that you're looking at in this game?
No, I was surprised with how good Hampton looked first game back, but that backfield does seem to be a true 50-50. So I don't think I can go between either of the running backs.
No, I don't want to call it. And at 5,900 and 5,700, I feel like they're both kind of expensive for that kind of share.
I agree.
All right, let's move on to the Green Bay Packers at the Denver Broncos. Another great game. I think I forgot to mention that Titans game and 49ers was 4 o'clock, but the Chiefs game is a 1 o'clock game. Green Bay and Denver is a 4 p.m. game as well. I think we see a lot of RJ Harvey here.
Yeah, and probably Josh Jacobs too. Neither of these teams.
They're both going to try to establish the run.
Exactly. Neither of these teams really blow out their opponents, and they kind of let their opponents hang around all game. You know, if I had to bet, it's like, what are the chances that this game comes down to a last-minute field goal? I think we're in for 57 minutes of lackluster football, followed by a game-winning drive. And which side do you think actually comes out on top?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't like either quarterback, Jordan Love or Bo Nix. Jordan Love is starting to show some life, and he had a decent week. He got to 20 points last week, but 5,400. He had a $500 price drop. I think that's speaking to the quality of this Denver defense. And then, well, Bo Nix is still priced up there at 5,900. I don't understand that quite either. So I'm just staying away from both of these quarterbacks. I don't think, like we just said, that this is going to be a defensive, slow-paced game. Neither one of them want to go out there and just light up the scoreboard and make the other team catch up. They're happy winning on that last drive.
Completely.
So then we have all of the other pieces. I like RJ Harvey mostly because I know he's getting the ball. with the injuries to the running game, it's now RJ Harvey. He gets the carries. I know he's going to get 15 to 20 carries in this game. The same with Josh Jacobs. And those are the only plays at 6,000 and RJ Harvey 6,000 and Josh Jacobs is 6,900. So he's a little bit priced up there. RJ Harvey is also involved in the passing game. So I don't mind that play at 6K.
Harvey
Josh
would
Jacobs worries me at 6,900.
Harvey would definitely be the lean here at home. Josh Jacobs, I feel like, if you have him in fantasy, he'll end up with a fine enough day, but he is not going to be a key piece on this slate. How I see the game going, that Denver defense is just too good, especially at home. So I would prefer RJ Harvey, especially with the savings of 9.
Yeah, with this being one of those really tough defensive games, I kind of like these really cheap wide receivers. So going to Marvin Mims at 3,600 or it'll also little Jordan Humphrey. How often do we hear his name? And he's sitting there at 3,000. He had 3 targets last week. He caught all 3 of them. And it feels like this could be one of those games where they're looking for somebody to catch a ball, and it's one of those lesser known names in this game because they're not the obvious targets. That's kind of why I lean away from Sutton or Torrey Franklin on that side, and then you never know who it's going to be for the Packers.
Yeah, they're good dart throws. Mims, you get access to the return game too. If he happens to run one in like he did last week, he's really dangerous as a return man. The other lean I would say is Pat Bryant. I think I'm staying away from little Jordan Humphrey, but Pat Bryant is at least that rookie wide receiver who should get that bump later on this season.
Yeah, 3,900 for Pat Bryant. He just bumped up 500 because DraftKings is agreeing with you. He did catch 4 targets last week. So definitely could be. All right, let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans. Houston's favored by 9.5, over-unders 42.5. This is a 1:00 game, even though we've got the Cardinals playing. Houston hasn't allowed a quarterback to go over 20 fantasy points all year. They have an interception in 9 of their 13 games. This probably isn't going to be the best day for Jacoby Brissett.
I think one of the streaks has to end too, because I don't think Brissett really has had a game under 20 fantasy points. So
yeah.
One of those has got to end here. I'm leaning that Brissett's the under 20 fantasy points. This Houston defense is just so good. They're going to be here at home. I think they'll kind of shut down this passing attack.
Yeah, I think so too. Because of that and because of the defense, I think I'm out on CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's down to 5,200, but he just doesn't need to put up the big points. It would be more interesting if we thought Arizona could somehow keep up, but I think this Houston defense will just pose a problem and keep that interception streak going for them. This game, we'll move on to everyone else. This game feels like give the ball to Woody Marks and let him eat time off the clock and let your defense win the game for Houston.
I lean that way too. I think you do have a decision to make on the slate with what do you do with that outside receiver for the Cardinals, because if it's Michael Wilson alone, then we know he's going to get at least targeted. How much those targets will be worth against this Houston secondary, who knows? Probably not good for 11, 142, and 2 like last week. It's just ridiculous what he's done without Harrison. I don't really know. I mean, we're recording this on Tuesday, so we don't have much injury news on what's going on with Harrison. If he's back out there, I'm definitely not playing either of them, even though Harrison is 1,000 cheaper than Wilson.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because it's more about who's playing that role. When Harrison was in, he was getting all those targets. When Wilson's in, he's getting all the targets. So, I mean, if anyone, it'd be Harrison if he plays $1,000 cheaper, but probably leaning away from both.
Yeah, I lean away from both, but it is interesting to think about because if we go along with the scenario, let's say Marvin Harrison Jr. is out. So we are down to Michael Wilson and Trey McBride because Dortch is gone too for the year. So it literally is Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. And Jacoby Brissett's going to throw it 45 times, I would say. Maybe more. They're going to have junk time. Brissett may throw 3 interceptions, whatever. It's not like Michael Wilson isn't going to catch the ball. I think they could get a touchdown. I think the volume is there. So I probably wouldn't go in on both Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. And I'm not sure I would even stack him with Jacoby Brissett in this difficult matchup, but I don't mind taking a shot on him just because of the volume alone.
Yeah. And Trey McBride has been cut off my board. He's still 7,400, which is hard to get to in the slate. And we just saw, Kelsey was held to 1 catch for 8 yards. This is just the defense you get those ceiling performances out of tight ends.
It's not, maybe you are looking at Michael Wilson at 6,600. He had 16 targets last week. That's crazy. I don't even know who the next wide receiver is for the Cardinals, but that may be who we're looking to if Marvin Harrison Jr. is out, because somebody's going to catch the ball and the ball is going to go in the air a lot.
Yeah. Trey Benson should be back, so maybe get involved in the passing game there.
Yeah, this is what, like the 3rd or 4th week I think we've been saying that.
I think they either have to activate him for this game or he's done for the year. Those are their options.
All right. It might be best if he's done for the year at their 3-10 record. Let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts at the Seattle Seahawks. We won't stay here too long. Seahawks are favored by 11.5 now. 42.5 is the over-under. It is a 4:00 game. Somehow you've got to find $3,700 to pay for that Seahawks defense going against either Riley Leonard in a good case or Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, which would this be the first time a grandfather could ever play quarterback in the NFL? I don't think even Joe Flacco got that title. I don't know. That was surprising to see.
Yeah, it was like it was April Fool's Day or something when I heard the news break that they were talking to Phillip Rivers. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Couldn't we find anybody, literally anybody, go to, the Canadian Football League or anywhere and find another quarterback? But no, you call up Phillip Rivers. I don't get it. All right, so I'm locking in the Seahawks defense, I think. It's not the most expensive one because there are some other ones like Houston and Jacksonville on the slate that are good too. But I really like this one, regardless of if it's Riley Leonard or if it's Phillip Rivers playing quarterback. Yeah, I think I would have just let Tyler Warren play quarterback.
I think that might be their best option. It's just wildcat with him and JT in the back.
Yeah, it probably would have. So the question comes down to, I'm not playing Riley Leonard or Phillip Rivers. Are you going to play Sam Darnold, or is this game just not a competitive game? Just mark it off, move on, and play other players outside of this game.
I don't think it's a competitive game. There's no way Darnold could get to a true potential that some of the other quarterbacks on the slate could get to in this environment. I do like, JSN is just such a top talent that even in matchups where it hasn't really been competitive, even if you're only getting production from that first half, he comes through and can be a wide receiver that you need. We know that. So I have been mixing in JSN, especially because there's Charvarius Ward had his 3rd concussion of the year. There's going to be no Sauce Gardner. This is a banged up Colts defense at this point. Jackson Smith-Njigba should have a great game. And then I think you're just going to see a healthy dose of those running backs throughout that second.
Yeah, I think so too. They just try to get this game over. In a world where we're seeing teams turn down their college bowl bids because they're afraid of player safety because they don't have enough healthy players to even play a real game. This game, they might have just should have said the same thing and not played it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, just quick note on Jonathan Taylor. This is not the matchup. Even if he gets a crazy workload, even if he gets 30 carries, Seahawks are the best rushing defense. There's really no way I can see him paying off anything.
No, I can't either. And then we have Charbonnet at 5,100 and Ken Walker at 5,600. I would lean Charbonnet here. He's just been getting a little bit more work inside the red zone. It's just I'm going to play the Seahawks defense and move off of this game. Let's move on to the New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars are favored by 11.5. Over-under is 41.5. This is another great defense to pay up for. They are 3,900. This is a 1:00 game. I'm guessing we see Brady Cook at touchdown for the Jets.
Or at QB.
Oh, sorry. What did I say?
He said a touchdown. I don't think he's going to be scored a lot.
I guess we see Brady Cook at quarterback for the Jets.
And he already got a pick he got a couple picks against Miami last week. So yeah, it just makes a case for the Jacksonville defense. I think it really is going to come down to those other pieces in this game. I don't have any interest in any of the quarterbacks involved.
No, I'm not taking. Trevor had like a great week last week in that Colts game at 19 points. That's probably the highest he's been at most of this season, if not the highest. But 5,700, I'm just going to stay away from this game. It's not going to be competitive either. And how about we'll move on to everyone else. ETN, Travis Etienne, you got to love him.
I do. And here are some stats of what we've seen from that Jets defense in the last 4 weeks. So this is post trade deadline. They sent off Quinnen Williams. They kind of fire sailed that defense. In the last 4 weeks, they have allowed 10 touchdowns to running backs and 683 combined yards. That comes out to about 36 fantasy points per game when you get the receptions in there too. I think every single lineup that I've been making has had ETN in it. We saw Tootin come in for 2 plays last week and get like a concussion or evaluated for a concussion. In one of them, he had 2 fumbles, 1 loss in 2 plays. So I don't think they're going to really trust him down the stretch. And ETN has been effective. He's been a good running back all throughout the season. I think he's going to get the workload here to pay off against a Jets defense we just want to target.
I think so too. He's just a must lock in this for me as well. And I'm not sure that we even see Tootin play. Without Tootin in there, it is all Travis Etienne. He had 20 carries last week. He'll get 20 more carries this week. And there's just nobody I like for the pass catchers or anything else in this game on the slate.
The third running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars is LaQuint Allen. So he might get involved if Tootin kind of gets relegated to that third spot. But every time that Allen's in the field, that really just tells me it's a passing down and he's there to pass block. He's a pretty good pass blocker, but he's not really good at running the ball and he has very little carries on the season. So I'm not going there.
Yeah, I'm not either. And although there were quite a few passes that Brady Cook threw, he didn't get any into the end zone. No touchdowns against the Dolphins. The Jaguars should just kind of roll in this game. Otherwise, there is volume on that, the Jets pass catchers, but this quarterback situation I'm just going to stay away from. Let's move on to a very interesting one. So we've got 3 more games on this slate. Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Bears. Chicago's favored by 7.5. Over under is 40.5. This is a game I'm surprised that the point total is so low. I think this has the potential to be a high scoring game. And part of that belief comes from what I saw the Browns allow Sanders to do last week. I'm one, surprised he could do it, but 2, I'm more surprised that the Browns let him throw the ball 42 times. His completion rate was still pretty low at 54%, but if you're going to let my quarterback throw it over 40 times, I really like that. And he's below $5,000. He's at $4,700. So I like playing Shedeur in here. It's not like the Bears have been super scary defense to play against. They're equally as capable as putting up points. And it may come on junk time, but I still like playing Sanders in this matchup. Do you like Caleb Williams or Shedeur Sanders?
I think I'd have to go with Sanders on that one just for, 4,700. You're hoping that, I think the game script you're rooting for is that the Bears take commanding lead, and it's really those Bears running backs setting pace with the Cleveland passing attack, and that Sanders can pay off. Luckily, we don't get negative points for sacks or negative yards in the backfield. So I think Sanders is fine. And at 4,700, and they have to see what they have in him. They're going into next year's draft. They got to know what they're doing as far as quarterbacks. So I think we could see 40 passing attempts.
Yeah, I think we will in this game. Let's move on to everyone else and who we might be stacking him with, which, who I'm stacking him with is Harold Fannin, their tight end at 4K. This is like an $8,700 stack. It's hard not to do that. If you're running it back, then we have the Swift on guy combined. We're going to combine their running backs, and you could just take them both. They're pretty cheap. I mean, what are they? Monangai is $5,200 and Swift is $5,700. So I have two running backs that get almost 15 carries each a game because the Bears like to run the ball that much, and they're both under 6K. You can go to some other 6K running backs on this slate that don't get 15 carries.
Yes. And I think also even if you're like fading this game and you want to stay off, have Fannin in your player pool and even as like a wide receiving option because he gets targeted so much. He had 11 targets last week and we saw Njoku get hurt. So I think he got evaluated for a concussion, I believe. He like went up for a ball.
Yeah.
He's going to be a name to monitor in your report, but especially if it's Fannin alone, like I don't know how you don't play him at 4,000. And especially, this is a great matchup for tight ends against a really banged up linebacker room for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I agree. I'll stay away from all of the pass catchers on the Bears side. I guess if you wanted to go with anyone, it's Loveland, obviously. He had 5 targets last week. He's 3,600, another great tight end to play. This is why we're getting those 2 tight end sets because there are so many tight ends that are being so trusted, especially with these younger quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I like Burden. I think Burden is due for an amazing game, but $1,000 price increase is going to kind of scare me away from him in this spot.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Carolina's favored by 2.5 and over-unders 40.5. This is a 4 o'clock game. This is an odd game, Carolina and New Orleans, but in my head, I'm going, I should listen to Vegas here. New Orleans doesn't give up big games to anybody. I don't know why I think this should be the game.
Yeah, it seems like Carolina plays better when they're the underdogs. You know, they surprised both the Packers and the Rams this season, but I don't think they're gonna blow out the Saints team. And I don't think that in a game script like that, you're really gonna get a great performance by Bryce Young. I think there's typically just better options. 40.5 seems low to me, but that being said, I don't think this is a great fantasy spot for any of the players here.
Yeah, not even Tyler Shuck.
Shucks look good. I just don't. 20 points isn't going to do it for this slate. And 4,900, I'd just rather have Sanders at 4,700, and we know that the higher ceiling there.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, Shuck seems to get his 20 points and get out. He's, in my mind, a safe play. I don't see, he's 18 to 22 points every week. He's very consistent. I see that he'll get it against the Carolina Panthers, but he isn't going to hit 30.
Yeah, and
which
was
is
22 points last week, featured 2 rushing touchdowns. So,
fair enough.
I don't know. It just isn't adding up.
No interest. Like I said, I have no interest in the rest of the Carolina side because the New Orleans defense, even though they're 3-10, they're playing fairly well and not giving up huge games. Any interest in the Carolina or the New Orleans run game or any of their pass catchers?
Devin Neal had a pretty good game. Carolina's defense is a lot better this year on the ground. And so I'm saying away, I think it would be Olave or nothing. We are getting a little bit of a discount at 6,200 after a terrible game where he barely was involved. He had 3 catches for 30 yards, but it's really him or nothing.
Yeah. I think there could just be a lot of just mistakes in this game, and it goes
And
lot of nowhere.
We aren't seeing full workload for Rico Dowdle anymore. They're kind of going back to more of a 50-50 split there. So that is just too much of a split for both their price tags.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's move on to the last game on the slate, which is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia is favored by 12.5. Over under is 38.5. 1 o'clock game. This whole game just feels like a trap to me for DFS that I kind of want to stay away from.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think Saquon's in a great spot. The Raiders have actually shut down the run. The only person I think can actually come through and have a pretty good day here is Devontae Smith. We know that Vegas is going to sit in that cover 3 look all game and basically just give up those small underneath targets. So you're really just hoping that Devontae Smith is going to rack it up with 10 to 12 catches and you're kind of getting that volume play. But he would be the option against that zone coverage for Vegas.
Yeah, I don't feel like they want to do anything unless they're forced to throw the ball. Jalen Hurts at 6,800 is expensive. I don't see him paying off. They They even kind of went away from the tush push last night. They got within like 3 yards and they weren't trying to push him in. They were
I
still
noticed
trying to
that
pass
too.
it, which is, yeah, a little bit surprising. So I don't know if they're telling us something or not, but 6,800 is more than I want to spend for a quarterback that I haven't seen it much from and the lowest point total on the board. Then on the other side, everyone's just expensive. Like you said, though, Devonta Smith at 5,800 is probably the most reasonable person there, but I'll probably just stay away.
Yeah,
I have
and this
better
doesn't feel like
plays.
a good spot for Bowers here, even if he is the main target for the Raiders.
Yeah, since we don't know if it's probably gonna be Kenny Pickett, I guess.
Yeah.
Fun days. All right, let's move on to lineups. I'll go with mine. I'm going with Shadur Sanders. So I'm going to that Cleveland Chicago game and stacking Sanders, who's just way too low, I feel like, at 4,700 because they've shown me they're going to let him throw it 40 times. And I think he's going to be in a situation where he has to throw it 40 times. I'm going to pair him with Fannin. And then I'm going to take both those Chicago running backs because they're going to keep giving them the ball. They're also in a good game script here. So we're going to go with that stack in that game. Lock in ETN because I think everyone's probably going to against the Jets there. And that allows you to save. You've saved a lot now. I mean, ETN was only 6,500 as well. So now I've got a lot of money. I'm going to take Puka at 8,700 and assume that he's getting it over Adams. Jameson Williams also in that game at 6,100. And then Ricky Pearsall to round that out just because I think he's going to have that volume as well. And then, of course, the Seahawks defense going against whatever's left of the Colts. Or if I get really lucky, they'll go against Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, that is a pretty good option. The double running backs kind of scares me, but they've done it before. We've seen them put up crazy numbers together. So especially you are getting kind of a value for both of them there. The first lineup, we let off talking about the main decision on the slate is what do you do with that Rams? How do you attack that Rams Detroit game? This one is going fully in on that and bringing Goff, Gibbs, and Williams as the stack with Devontae Adams and Colby Parkinson bringing back on the other side from the Rams. Then going with ETN, and for the other slots, I got Devontae Smith attacking that Vegas front, and then Jaden Higgins, who has been kind of that rookie wide receiver for Houston. He's really established into that number 2 role. Christian Kirk is kind of getting phased out. So at 4,200, he isn't a name we brought up, but I think he has a pretty good matchup against the Cardinals and for that price tag. And then I am completely punting defense and just saying that none of them matter. All of the top ones kind of fail at the Raiders defense at 2,000 and kind of just fading the Eagles. Normally, I wouldn't really get my receiver against my defense, but I think here, I mean, we just saw 5 turnovers from Jalen Hurts, so that's why I'm going with the Raiders defense. I'm also with my other lineup that is kind of going against the Rams Detroit game. I also have that Raiders defense in here to help me afford Derrick Henry, Jackson Smith and Jigma, Devontae Adams, and Travis Etienne. And then for a cheap stack to kind of fix it together, it's that Jackson Dart, Theo Johnson, and Chris Rodriguez stack that I was talking.
Yeah, I like those. I do think you're going to have one of those pay up defense options. One of them's going to hit it this week. I just don't know which one it is, but I think one of those top 4 is going to have a big week. And on both of these lineups, the way that you could change it is look for those 2 tight ends. So in your flex, you've definitely paid up a little bit, and there were quite a few tight ends under 3,000 that we talked about that you could plug in here and play to save up and pay at tight end if you wanted to do something slightly different and pay for that tight end or pay for that defense. All right. Well, that will do it for week 15. I can't wait for the holiday slates and those Saturday games when things get a little bit smaller instead of these 13 game slates. But drop your favorite plays in the comments and we will see you next week.